He installed cameras in his own home to catch the nanny failing. What he saw at 2 in the morning, alone in the dark, watching weeks of footage he'd been avoiding, didn't just shock him. It destroyed him. Alexander Harris was 43 when his wife died, 11 days after giving birth to twin boys. Emily had been a pediatric neurologist in San Diego. 4 years of fertility battles, 2 miscarriages, everything they had poured into trying for a baby. When she finally made it to 37 weeks carrying Aaron and Adrian, they thought their prayers had been answered. Emergency C-section. Both boys born small but breathing. Emily held them against her chest one time, smiled at Alexander, whispered, "We did it." 4 days after coming home, she collapsed. Internal bleeding the hospital missed, dead before the ambulance arrived. The twins were 11 days old. Professional nurses quit after 2 weeks. These babies need more than we can provide. Both boys cried constantly, especially Aaron. Something felt wrong, but Dr. Andrew Sullivan kept dismissing it. Normal for preemies. Then Emily's sister Diane showed up with lawyers. Emergency custody hearing. Claims Alexander was unfit. Evidence stacked against him. "Install cameras," Diane told him. "Prove you're monitoring everything." Desperate, Alexander hired Maureen James, 29, studying for her nursing license, gentle with the twins in ways that eased their crying. Diane hated her immediately. Too young, unqualified, dangerous. The doubts got inside Alexander's head. He installed the cameras. Weeks passed. His company faced a crisis, 18-hour days, no time to check footage, until one night at 2 a.m., alone, he finally opened the files. What he saw changed everything. Before we continue, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. Because this story is about the people carrying weight we never see, the ones God puts in our path when we're too broken to notice. And if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever sacrificed everything for someone who didn't even know, this one's for you. You're seen. You matter. And maybe this story found you today because you needed to hear that. Alexander sat in his home office, the house silent except for the hum of his laptop. 2:17 a.m. He couldn't sleep. Hadn't been able to since the takeover fight ended. Victory should have felt good, but the penthouse was too quiet, and Emily's absence too loud. He opened the security footage files, 3 weeks of recordings he'd never watched, started at the beginning, expecting to see what Diane had warned him about. Maureen on her phone, the twins crying unattended, proof he could take to court. The first clip loaded. 8:43 a.m. on a Tuesday morning. Maureen was on the living room floor with both boys, but she wasn't just playing with them. Her hands moved with precision, lifting Aaron's left arm, rotating it at specific angles, stretching it gently while counting softly in another language. Her movements weren't casual. They were clinical, purposeful. Alexander leaned closer to the screen. She did this for 47 minutes straight. The same exercises over and over. Aaron would fuss and she'd pause, kiss his forehead, whisper something, then continue. This wasn't normal childcare. He clicked to the next clip. 11:15 a.m., same day. Kitchen. Maureen making bottles, and her face was wet. Silent tears streaming down her cheeks while she measured formula with shaking hands. She gripped the counter, shoulders trembling. Then she wiped her face, took a breath, and walked back to the living room wearing a smile the twins would never know was fake. Alexander's chest tightened. Another clip. 2:30 p.m. Maureen on the floor again with Aaron, moving his legs in patterns that looked medical. Hip rotations, ankle flexions, things Alexander had never seen. She pulled out a folded paper from her pocket, glanced at it, continued the exercises. Alexander paused, zoomed in on the paper. The heading read, "Early Intervention Protocols for Infant." The rest was folded, but his hands went cold. He clicked forward. 4:20 p.m. Maureen preparing dinner, grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, something careful and homemade. She plated it, stared at it, then wrapped it up and put it away. pulled out a granola bar instead, ate it, standing at the counter. She was using her food money for something else. Later footage showed her phone screen, Amazon orders, therapy equipment, positioning pillows, sensory cards, bought with her own money. Alexander scrolled faster. Every single day, the same pattern. Hours of therapy after he left for work. Her crying when she thought no one could see, equipment she hid before he came home. Then he found the bath time clip. Maureen lifting Aaron gently, examining his head with careful fingers. She found something, a mark, and her whole body went rigid. Her hand covered her mouth. She stared at it, then pulled out her phone and took photos from multiple angles. She heard Alexander's car, deleted the photos, composed her face, and was smiling when he walked in 30 seconds later. Alexander stopped the video. His son had a mark on his head Maureen had photographed and hidden. Dr. Sullivan had said everything was fine, but Maureen knew something she wasn't saying, and she'd been carrying it alone. Alexander couldn't stop watching. He clicked through more clips, his coffee going cold beside him, the night stretching into early morning without him noticing. There, another one. 9:30 p.m. on a Wednesday. Maureen was supposed to be off at 8, but she was still there. On the floor between the cribs, Aaron in her arms, doing those same careful exercises, her voice soft, exhausted. "Just 10 more minutes, sweet boy, then you can rest." She wasn't getting paid for this. Next clip, 11:45 p.m., same night. Both twins fussy and Maureen holding them simultaneously, one in each arm, swaying gently, singing something low and rhythmic, tears streaming down her face while she sang. Then she whispered something that made Alexander's breath catch. "I'm so sorry I have to leave you soon, but someone has to make sure you get help. Even if it can't be me. Leave." Why would she be leaving? Alexander scrolled back through the timeline, found a clip from 2 weeks ago. Maureen in her small bedroom off the kitchen, a room he'd barely thought about, just knew she stayed there sometimes when the twins needed overnight care. She was sitting on the floor, holding a letter. Official government seal visible even on the grainy footage, her whole body shaking as she read it. Then she folded it carefully, hid it in a drawer, and sat there crying into her hands for 20 minutes. Alexander's stomach dropped. He fast-forwarded, found another clip. Maureen on her phone late at night, searching something. He zoomed in, could barely make out the screen. How to report medical malpractice anonymously. His heart started pounding. Another clip. Maureen during Aaron's checkup, the one Alexander had barely paid attention to, too busy on his phone dealing with work. He watched it now with the sound turned up. Maureen's voice, gentle but concerned. His left side seems stiff. He doesn't move his arm much. Both babies startle easily, but Aaron's reflexes seem really exaggerated. His head tilts right even during tummy time. "I think it might be worth," Dr. Sullivan cut her off. "I delivered these babies. I know their baseline. Premature nervous systems develop slower. What you're describing is textbook normal." But Alexander saw it now, the flash across Sullivan's face. Just for a second, something that looked like fear before the professional mask slammed back down. Maureen had pressed gently. But Aaron's asymmetry seems... "I've been practicing medicine for 32 years, Sullivan said coldly. "I think my medical degree carries more weight than a nanny's observations." Alexander had been right there in the room, hadn't heard any of it, too distracted, too buried in his own crisis to notice his son's doctor dismissing concerns that, watching now, seeing Aaron's stiff movements, the way his head tilted, were clearly real. He clicked to another clip. Maureen researching on her phone, article after article about infant cerebral palsy, birth trauma, forceps injuries, oxygen deprivation. She was teaching herself how to save his son, while he'd been installing cameras to catch her failing. Alexander's hands were shaking now. He searched through more footage, looking for, he didn't even know what, answers, understanding, some explanation for why this woman would sacrifice everything for children who weren't hers. Then he found the clip that broke him completely. The timestamp read 1:18 a.m. 4 nights ago. Maureen in her bedroom, door closed. Alexander almost skipped past it. What could happen in her private space that mattered? But something made him pause. She was on the floor, back against the bed, laptop open in front of her, typing something. Her face was wet, but she wasn't making a sound. Just tears running down while her fingers moved across the keyboard. Alexander leaned closer to the screen, adjusted the angle. Could barely make out what she was writing. It was an email. To Massachusetts Medical Board. Subject, urgent, potential medical malpractice involving infant patient. His blood went cold. She kept typing. I am writing to report concerns regarding Dr. Andrew Sullivan and his treatment of twin infants Aaron and Adrian Harris, born via emergency C-section on... She listed the date, the hospital, every detail she'd memorized. Patient Aaron Harris shows clear signs of birth trauma. Left side hypertonia, exaggerated Moro reflex, persistent torticollis. Physical examination reveals a faint but visible mark on his scalp, consistent with forceps placement. When these symptoms were brought to Dr. Sullivan's attention at the 2-month checkup, he dismissed them as normal, despite their progressive nature. Alexander's hands gripped the edge of his desk. She continued typing. I believe Dr. Sullivan caused injury during delivery and is now covering up the damage by refusing proper evaluation and treatment. Without immediate intervention, this child will suffer permanent developmental delays. I'm submitting this report anonymously because I am undocumented and fear deportation, but I cannot in good conscience remain silent while a child's future is being sacrificed to protect a doctor's reputation. She sat back, reading what she'd written. Her shoulders shook. Then she highlighted the entire email and deleted it. Opened a new draft. Wrote the same thing again, word for word. Deleted it again. She did this 5 times. Finally, she saved a draft and closed the laptop. Pulled her knees to her chest, buried her face, and cried the way people cry when they're completely alone. Raw, broken, the kind of crying that comes from carrying something too heavy for too long. Alexander heard her whisper through the speakers. I'm sorry, Miguel. I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. But I can save them. Even if it costs me everything. Even if I lose everything again. She lifted her head, looked at the ceiling like she was talking to someone who wasn't there. God, I know you see this. I know you know what I'm trying to do. Please, please let them get help even after I'm gone. Please don't let Aaron suffer like Miguel did. I'm begging you. Alexander stopped the video. His whole body was shaking. Maureen had a brother who died, a brother with the same condition Aaron had, and she'd been too late to save him. But she wasn't going to be too late this time, even if it meant destroying herself. Alexander clicked to the next file, desperate now to understand. The timestamp was from yesterday morning, and what he saw made everything worse. Yesterday morning, 6:47 a.m. Maureen's key in the door, 30 minutes before she was supposed to arrive. Alexander watched her slip into the quiet penthouse, moving carefully so she wouldn't wake anyone. She went straight to the nursery, picked up Aaron first, so gently, like he was made of glass, kissed his forehead, examined his left arm, checked the range of motion, her face tight with concern. Then Adrian. Same careful attention, checking his neck rotation, his muscle tone. She carried both boys to the living room, laid out a soft mat, and started the therapy routine Alexander now recognized. But this time, he watched her face instead of just her hands. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, thinner than when she'd started 2 months ago, moving like every muscle hurt, but she didn't stop. Didn't cut corners, gave Aaron the full hour of exercises even though her hands were shaking by the end. At 8:15, she heard Alexander's bedroom door open. Immediately hid all the therapy equipment, scooped up both boys, and was casually playing peekaboo when he walked past the living room on his way to the kitchen. Good morning, Mr. Harris, she'd said, smiling. He'd barely looked at her. Morning. Grabbed his coffee, took a work call, left for the office 20 minutes later without asking about the twins. Watching it now, Alexander wanted to reach through the screen and shake himself. He clicked forward. Lunchtime. Maureen feeding Aaron with a special bottle he'd never noticed before. Different nipple, angled specifically to help with his oral motor control. It took 45 minutes to get 3 ounces into him. She never rushed, never showed frustration, just patient, constant, loving. Another clip. 3 p.m., Maureen on her phone, texting someone. Alexander zoomed in on the screen reflection in the window behind her. "Mama, I can't send money this month. I'm sorry. I had to buy equipment for the baby I'm caring for. He needs it more than we do right now. I'll send extra next month, I promise." The response came in Tagalog, but even without understanding the words, Alexander could read the tone. Her mother was upset. Maureen typed back, "I know, Mama, I know you're counting on me, but this little boy, if I don't help him, no one will. God will provide for us. Please trust me." She set the phone down, put her head in her hands. Alexander felt sick. She was supporting her family back home, sending money every month, and she'd stop so she could buy therapy equipment for his son. He scrolled faster through the timeline, looking for, he didn't know what. Something that would make sense of this, something that would explain why someone would give up everything for strangers. Then he found the footage from 3 days ago. Maureen in the kitchen after putting the twins down for the night, pulling something from her bag. A small photo in a frame, worn at the edges like it had been held 1,000 times. A little boy, maybe 7 or 8 years old, in a wheelchair. Smiling despite the way his body was twisted, his left hand curled tight against his chest. Maureen traced the photo with her finger, tears falling onto the glass. "I couldn't save you, Miguel," she whispered, "but I won't let it happen again. I won't." Alexander's vision blurred. She'd watched her brother die from the same condition Aaron had, and now she was watching history try to repeat itself. But this time, she had the knowledge, the skills, the chance to change the ending, even if it destroyed her in the process. Alexander clicked to the most recent footage, this morning, just hours ago. And what he saw made him realize he was already too late. This morning, 5:52 a.m. Maureen entering the penthouse even earlier than usual. She looked like she hadn't slept. Went straight to the nursery, but this time she didn't pick up the twins right away. She just stood there between their cribs, staring down at Aaron and Adrian sleeping peacefully, her hand covering her mouth. Then she pulled an envelope from her jacket pocket. The same government letter Alexander had seen her crying over weeks ago. She unfolded it, read it again like maybe the words had changed. They hadn't. Her lips moved, barely audible through the camera's microphone. 23 days left. She refolded the letter, put it away, and wiped her eyes. Picked up Aaron, held him against her chest, and started singing that same lullaby, the one Alexander now knew she'd sung to her dying brother. Her voice cracked halfway through, but she kept going. "Your daddy's going to find out soon, sweet boy," she whispered into Aaron's hair. "And when he does, he's going to get you the help you need. Real doctors, real therapy, everything I can't give you." She kissed his head. "I won't be here to see you get better. But that's okay. That's okay because you will get better. You have to." Alexander's throat closed. She thought he was going to find out after she was gone. Thought she'd have to leave without ever telling him the truth, trusting that somehow her anonymous report would be enough. She had no idea he was watching this right now. The footage continued. Maureen doing the morning therapy session, but slower today. More careful. Like she was memorizing every moment, counting each stretch in whispered numbers, documenting Aaron's responses in her journal with extra detail. At 7:30, she pulled out her phone and opened that draft email again. The report to the medical board. Read through it one more time, her finger hovering over the send button. She didn't press it. Not yet. Still trying to buy more time. A few more days of therapy. A few more chances to help Aaron before she had to blow everything up. Alexander checked the timestamp on the current footage. This was from 6 hours ago, which meant Maureen was in the penthouse right now, down the hall, probably already awake, probably already starting her morning routine with the twins. She had no idea he'd spent the entire night watching 3 weeks of her secret life. No idea he knew about Miguel, about the deportation notice, about the equipment she'd bought with grocery money, about the report she was planning to send before she disappeared. No idea that everything she'd been hiding was about to come crashing down. Alexander closed the laptop, sat in the dark office, his heart pounding, mind racing through everything he'd just seen. He could hear movement down the hall now, Maureen's soft footsteps, the nursery door opening quietly, her voice, gentle and warm, greeting the twins. He stood up, walked down the hallway on shaking legs, found her exactly where the cameras had shown her every morning, on the floor with Aaron, doing those careful exercises, singing softly. She looked up when she heard him in the doorway, saw his face, and froze. "How long have you known?" Alexander's voice came out rougher than he meant it to. He hadn't slept, hadn't processed anything except 3 weeks of footage showing him a truth he'd been too blind to see. Maureen's hands froze mid-stretch on Aaron's left arm, her face drained of color. "Mr. Harris, She carefully set Aaron down on the mat, stood up slowly. "I don't understand what you—" "About Aaron's injury," his voice cracked. "About Dr. Sullivan. How long have you known?" The air left her lungs. She took a step back, hit the wall behind her. Her eyes darted to the twins, then back to Alexander, calculating escape routes that didn't exist. "I can explain." "How long?" Maureen's lips trembled. 6 weeks. Since the 2-month checkup when I saw his face. The way he looked when I mentioned the symptoms." Alexander's jaw clenched. 6 weeks you've been doing this. The therapy, the equipment, using your own money. "I didn't know what else to do." Her voice broke. "You weren't listening. The doctor wasn't listening. Aaron needed help and nobody was. Why didn't you tell me?" The question hung between them like a blade. Maureen's eyes filled with tears. "Because I'm illegal, Mr. Harris." The words came out barely above a whisper, but they hit Alexander like a physical blow. "My visa expired 7 months ago. I couldn't afford to fix it. And the second I accuse a respected doctor of malpractice, the second I make myself visible to any official system, I get investigated. They check my status. I get deported." Her voice was shaking now. "I knew you wouldn't believe me over him. I knew I had no credibility, no standing, no proof except what I learned taking care of my brother who died from the same thing." Alexander stared at her. "Your brother?" "Miguel." Fresh tears spilled over. "He had cerebral palsy from a birth injury. We couldn't afford treatment in the Philippines. I watched him suffer for 8 years before he died. I was 14. She wiped her face with shaking hands. "I recognized Aaron's symptoms immediately. The stiffness, the reflexes, the mark on his head from forceps trauma. I've seen this before, Mr. Harris. I know what happens when it goes untreated." "So you just treated him yourself? In secret?" "What choice did I have?" Her voice rose, desperate now. "Stay silent and watch another child suffer, or speak up and get deported before I could help him at all?" Alexander's mind was reeling. "The deportation notice, I saw it on the footage. You have 23 days. Maureen's voice dropped to nothing. "I was going to stay until the end, do as much therapy as possible, then send an anonymous report to the medical board before I left. At least then you'd know the truth. At least Aaron would get real help even if I wasn't here to see it. You were going to sacrifice everything. It wasn't a question. He's a baby, Mr. Harris." Tears streaming freely now. "An innocent baby who didn't ask for any of this, whose mother died giving him life, who deserves every chance to be okay." Her voice broke completely. "I already failed to save one child. I couldn't fail again, even if it cost me everything, even if—" She stopped mid-sentence, seeing something change in Alexander's face. "What did you see?" she whispered. "On the cameras. What did you see?" Alexander's hands were shaking. "Everything," he said quietly. "I saw everything." Maureen's knees nearly gave out, and in that moment, she understood. He knew about Miguel, about the therapy, about the money she'd spent, about the email she'd drafted and deleted 100 times, about every single thing she'd been hiding. She waited for him to tell her to leave, to call immigration, to fire her and protect himself from the liability. Instead, Alexander pulled out his phone, started dialing. Maureen's heart stopped. This was it. This was how it ended. But the name he spoke into the phone wasn't immigration. It was something she never expected. "Get me David Rostov. I don't care what time it is, now." Maureen stood frozen against the wall, watching Alexander pace the nursery floor, phone pressed to his ear. "David, it's Alexander Harris. I need an emergency immigration case handled today. Yes, today. I'm sponsoring a work visa." He glanced at Maureen. "Full name?" She could barely speak. "Isabel Maureen Santos." Isabel Maureen Santos, Filipino national, expired student visa, currently undocumented. I need her legal status fixed immediately, whatever it costs. He paused, listening. "I don't care if it's irregular. Make it happen. Bill me directly." He hung up, dialed again before Maureen could process what just happened. "Dr. Benjamin Torres, this is Alexander Harris. My twin sons need an immediate evaluation for suspected birth trauma and cerebral palsy. Today, if possible." Pause. "Yes, I know it's Saturday. I'll pay whatever premium you need. Both boys, full neurological workup." Another call. "Sullivan's office. This is Alexander Harris. You can inform Dr. Sullivan he's fired effective immediately. Forward all medical records for Aaron and Adrian Harris to Dr. Benjamin Torres by end of business today. And tell him I'll be filing a formal complaint with the medical board on Monday morning." He ended the call. Made one more. "Patricia, Diane, listen carefully. The custody suit is over. Withdraw the petition by Monday or I'll countersue for harassment and expose the financial motive behind your claim. Don't test me." He hung up, finally looked at Maureen. She was crying so hard she could barely stand. "Mr. Harris, I can't. You saved my sons." His voice was raw. "While I was planning to fire you, while I was looking for reasons to blame you for everything falling apart, you were saving them. I just did what anyone—" "No," Alexander cut her off. "Not anyone. You spent your own money, your food money. You worked hours you weren't paid for. You risked everything. Your future, your dream of nursing school, your chance to stay in this country. For children who aren't yours." His voice cracked. "You did what I should have been doing, what their father should have seen." Maureen shook her head. "You were grieving. You lost your wife. You were trying to survive." "I was drowning." Alexander's eyes were red, and I almost took them down with me. "If you hadn't been here—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Silence filled the nursery except for the twins' soft breathing. "The lawyer I just called," Alexander said quietly. "Best immigration attorney in Boston. He'll have your visa status fixed within a week. Full work authorization, legal residency." Maureen's legs gave out. She slid down the wall to the floor. "I'm tripling your salary," Alexander continued. "Full benefits. And I'm paying for nursing school. Full-time, not night classes. You'll work reduced hours here, but keep full pay so you can focus on your degree." "Mr. Harris, that's too much." "It's not enough." His voice broke completely. "It'll never be enough for what you've done." Maureen covered her face with her hands, sobbing. "But there's one more thing I need from you," Alexander said. She looked up, terrified. He got down on the floor beside her, right there on the nursery carpet where she'd spent hundreds of hours doing therapy in secret. "Teach me," he whispered. "Show me how to help them. Show me what you've been doing. I want to learn. I need to learn." Maureen stared at him through her tears. "Please," Alexander said, "let me be their father, the one they deserve, the one Emily believed I could be." For the first time in 6 weeks, Maureen wasn't carrying the weight alone. And for the first time since Emily died, Alexander wasn't running from the truth. But there was still one thing neither of them knew. Something that would change everything again. Dr. Benjamin Torres arrived at the penthouse 3 hours later. He was in his 50s, calm presence, kind eyes, spent 20 minutes just watching Aaron and Adrian before he touched them. Then another hour doing the gentlest, most thorough examination Alexander had ever witnessed. Maureen stood in the corner, arms wrapped around herself, terrified. Finally, Dr. Torres sat back, looked at Alexander with an expression that was equal parts professional concern and quiet anger. Your son Aaron has mild hypertonic cerebral palsy, almost certainly from birth trauma. His voice was measured but firm. The torticollis, the left side stiffness, the exaggerated reflexes, these are classic presentations. Adrian shows some low muscle tone that needs monitoring, but Aaron's condition required intervention months ago. Alexander's stomach dropped. Months ago? At the 2-month checkup when concerns were first raised. Torres glanced at Maureen. Someone tried to get him help. Someone recognized the symptoms early when treatment is most effective. Dr. Sullivan said everything was normal. Dr. Sullivan was wrong, or lying. Torres pulled out a small flashlight, showed Alexander something on Aaron's scalp. This mark here? Forceps placement, and the bruising pattern suggests excessive force during delivery. This should have been documented immediately post-birth, should have triggered follow-up care. The room tilted. Someone injured my son during the C-section, Alexander said slowly, and then covered it up. That would be my assessment, yes. Torres's jaw was tight. I'll be filing my own report with the medical board. This is actionable malpractice. He turned to Maureen, his expression softening completely. You've been doing therapy with him, haven't you? She nodded, not trusting her voice. May I see your documentation? Maureen pulled out her journal with shaking hands. Pages and pages of detailed notes, exercises, timing, Aaron's responses, tiny improvements tracked with the precision of someone who'd done this before. Torres read through it, his eyebrows rising higher with each page. This is exceptional work, he said quietly. Professional-grade intervention. Where did you train? I didn't. Maureen's voice was barely audible. I cared for my brother. He had CP. I learned everything trying to help him. Torres looked at her for a long moment. You saved this child from permanent developmental delays. If these symptoms had gone untreated another 2 months, we'd be looking at irreversible damage. You gave him his future back. Maureen's knees buckled. Alexander caught her, held her steady. I want you on Aaron's care team, Torres said. Official capacity. I'll supervise, but you're clearly the expert on his specific case. You'll need to be certified, of course, but she's enrolling in nursing school, Alexander said. Full-time. I'm covering tuition. Torres smiled. Good. The medical field needs people who care like this. He stood, packed his equipment. I'll send over a formal treatment plan by Monday. Aaron will need ongoing therapy, but the prognosis is excellent thanks to early intervention. He paused at the door. Mr. Harris, the person who did this to your son, who injured him and then covered it up? His voice went cold. Make sure he faces consequences. Children like Aaron deserve justice. After Torres left, Alexander and Maureen sat on the nursery floor. Aaron between them, Adrian sleeping peacefully in his crib. Show me, Alexander said softly. Show me the first exercise. Maureen's hands were still shaking, but she picked up Aaron gently, demonstrated the careful stretch of his left arm, the precise angle, the counting rhythm. Like this, 10 reps 3 times a day. You have to be patient. It takes time. Alexander watched, memorized every movement. Can I try? She handed Aaron to him, guided his hands to the right position. Gentle, just like that. Count with me. They counted together. 1 through 10. Alexander's voice breaking halfway through because he was finally doing something that mattered for his son. Good, Maureen whispered. That's perfect. They worked together for an hour, Maureen teaching, Alexander learning. Both of them focused entirely on this tiny human who needed them both. When Aaron finally fell asleep, exhausted from the therapy, Alexander looked at Maureen. Thank you, he said, for not giving up on them, for not giving up even when I gave you every reason to. Maureen wiped her eyes. They're worth it. Every sacrifice, every risk, they're worth everything. I know, Alexander said. I'm just sorry it took me so long to see it. 3 weeks later, something happened that changed everything one final time. Something that proved God's timing is always perfect, even when we can't see it. 3 months later, Alexander left work at 5 p.m. sharp. It was a Tuesday. His board members had stopped questioning it. The company ran fine without him micromanaging every decision. Turned out the world didn't end when he chose his sons over conference calls. He walked into the penthouse and heard laughter coming from the living room. Maureen was on the floor with both boys, now 7 months old. She looked different, less exhausted, more herself. The weight of secrets no longer pulling her down. Her visa had come through 2 weeks after that morning in the nursery. She was enrolled at Boston College School of Nursing, attending classes 3 days a week while still working reduced hours with the twins. "How'd they do today?" Alexander asked, setting down his briefcase, something he used to bring home and ignore. Now he actually left work at work. Aaron rolled from back to tummy, both sides. Maureen's smile was radiant. 3 times. Alexander's throat tightened. 3 months ago, Aaron couldn't roll at all. His left side too stiff, his muscles too tight. Now he was moving like any other baby. "Dr. Torres came by for the weekly check," Maureen continued. "He said Aaron's progress is exceeding every projection. The torticollis is almost completely resolved." Alexander got down on the floor beside them. Adrian immediately crawled into his lap, something that still made Alexander's chest ache with gratitude. His sons knew him now, trusted him, wanted him. He picked up Aaron, did the stretching exercises that had become as natural as breathing, counted in rhythm with Maureen, their voices overlapping like a song they'd practiced 1,000 times. The medical board had suspended Dr. Sullivan's license pending investigation. Criminal charges were likely. Alexander had made sure of that, not out of vengeance, but because other children deserved protection. Diane had withdrawn the custody suit without a fight once she realized Alexander had documentation of her financial motives. She hadn't contacted him since, and every night before bed, Alexander sat in the nursery and talked to Emily's picture on the wall, told her about the boys' day, about Maureen's nursing school classes, about the small victories that felt like miracles. "You'd be so proud of them," he'd whisper, "and you were right about something. God does provide. Even when we can't see it, even when we're too broken to recognize help standing right in front of us." Now, watching Aaron laugh as Maureen tickled his feet, Alexander felt something he hadn't felt since Emily died. Hope. "Mr. Harris, look." Maureen's voice pulled him back. She was holding a toy just out of Aaron's reach. Aaron was staring at it, concentrating. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached out with both hands, left and right. Working together? The toy wasn't the point. The reaching was. Both hands, equal strength, perfect coordination. Maureen's eyes filled with tears. He did it. He actually did it. Alexander couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Aaron grabbed the toy with both hands and brought it to his mouth, completely unaware that he'd just proven every doctor wrong, validated every sacrifice Maureen had made, justified every sleepless night and terrified prayer. "Gail would be so proud of you," Maureen whispered, one hand on Aaron's head. So proud. Alexander understood then what he'd been too blind to see before. God hadn't taken Emily away as punishment. He'd sent Maureen as grace. A young woman who'd lost her brother, carrying that grief across an ocean, working jobs that barely paid rent, fighting to stay in a country that didn't want her, all so she'd be exactly where she needed to be the moment Alexander's sons needed her most. "Thank you," Alexander said, his voice breaking, "for everything. For seeing them when I couldn't. For staying when you had every reason to run. For loving them like they're mine," Maureen finished softly. "Because they are. Maybe not by blood, but by choice, by love, by every hour I spent believing they deserved a future." Alexander pulled both boys close, Maureen's hand resting on his shoulder. They sat there on the floor, this family that grief and grace had built together, and watched Aaron play with both hands. Equal, strong, whole. Outside, the sun was setting over San Diego. Inside, 3 people who'd all lost someone they loved had found something they didn't know they needed. Each other. And a second chance to get it right. Sometimes the people who save us aren't the ones we expect. Sometimes God sends help in forms we almost miss. Quiet, unnoticed, sacrificing everything while we're too broken to see. This story is for every caregiver working in silence, every immigrant fighting to stay, every person choosing love over self-preservation. You're seen. You matter. And your sacrifice changes lives in ways you'll never fully know.
Tonight in rural Virginia, billionaire Sean Nicholas unlocked the side gate to his estate with a biometric key, expecting silence. A delayed return home. He'd left a merger meeting in flames just hours before, and he hadn't told anyone he was coming back. His shoes echoed down the polished hallway. Everything looked untouched, but from the second-floor landing, a sound broke the calm. Not a cry. More like a breath caught mid-sob. Thin, wet, desperate. Sean froze. "Jake?" he called. No answer. His throat tightened. He moved faster. He checked the nursery. Empty. The twins' bottles sat rinsed in the drying rack. He passed the hallway closet, still half open. Then he pushed the door to the master bedroom, and time stopped. Jake and Josh were bound at the ankles with soft rope, their tiny bodies leaning into a slumped figure, Elizabeth. The maid's arms were tied above her head to the bedpost, her lips sealed with silver tape. Her eyes were glassy with terror but alert enough to meet his like they'd been waiting for him. His phone slipped from his palm and hit the carpet with a dead thud. He lunged forward, panic eclipsing thought. He ripped the tape off Jake's ankles first, then Josh's. Their small chests rose and fell fast. Sean's hands shook so violently that when he tore at the restraints on Elizabeth, the edge of the tape cut deep into his skin. "Hold on," he breathed. "I've got you." Elizabeth coughed when the gag came off, eyes wide. She tried to speak, but nothing came. Just a croaked exhale and a flicker of something close to shame. Sean looked around. No shattered glass, no broken locks, no alarm blaring. The silence was louder than anything else. Police arrived within minutes. Officers moved with quiet efficiency, snapping gloves, taking photos, searching for forced entry that didn't exist. The house's state-of-the-art system showed no alert, no breach, just a smooth 3-hour gap in surveillance, looping footage that made the entire nightmare seem unreal. One detective gently asked, "Who else has access to this house, Mr. Nicholas?" Sean didn't answer at first. His gaze stayed locked on the woman sitting in a nearby armchair, gently rocking Jake in her arms. Elizabeth didn't ask for permission. She simply reached for the child when he whimpered, humming something soft, familiar. She hadn't left, even when she was the one most doubted, even when the questions started circling like vultures. Already, Sean's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, headlines forming. A photo of the estate's long driveway snapped by some local passerby. Tech mogul's home in police lockdown. Nanny at scene. He didn't open it. He looked back at the woman in the chair and the sons she held. And he realized this wasn't just a crime scene. It was a message. Sean Nicholas wasn't supposed to be home tonight. At 40, he was the founder of VerseCorp, a stealth-mode logistics firm with government contracts and stock whisperers clawing for a peek. He lived deliberately off-radar, raising his twin boys alone after a custody war scorched what was left of his marriage. His home, tucked into the hills of Virginia, was a fortress. Cameras, biometric locks, and only a handful of trusted staff. Elizabeth William had been with them just 9 months. Quiet, precise, unflinching. He thought he knew who she was. Tonight would change everything. But before we begin, click subscribe, like this video, and tell me where in the world you're watching from. The house was in lockdown by midnight. Blue and red lights painted the long windows like a silent alarm the world could see. Inside, it felt colder, quieter, the kind of quiet that settles over shock like a blanket too heavy to lift. Sean sat at the edge of the sofa, elbows on his knees, blood dried along the ridge of his palm. Across from him, Elizabeth held Josh, rocking gently in one of the nursery's upholstered chairs. Her wrists bore the faint imprint of the rope, a bruise already blooming along one arm. But she didn't ask for painkillers. She didn't even ask for water. She just hummed. A low, circular melody that sounded like something her mother might have sung. Something southern, something old. Officers moved through the house with practiced care, opening drawers, noting timestamps, murmuring into radios. Their questions were sharp but routine. Any signs of forced entry? Nothing so far, sir. Locks are clean, windows secure. Security system. Who controls it? Only me and the night manager, Sean said, both biometrically linked. And where is your night manager? Off tonight, he muttered. Scheduled days off rotate. Who else has access to the code panel? Silence. His mouth opened, but no words followed. He didn't know. Not exactly. The estate's smart system was advanced, coded, layered, restricted to a few staff. But a few was too many when someone had clearly overridden it. Surveillance showed the same 3-hour footage looped. Whoever had done this hadn't just broken in. They'd bypassed the whole house without leaving a trace. This was no random crime, this was precision. The lead detective, a woman in her 40s with crow's feet and steady hands, stepped aside to take a call. When she returned, her voice was calm but edged. Mr. Nicholas, it appears someone's leaked this. We're seeing reports online. Media will start circling. Sean blinked. Leaked? She nodded. Local blogger posted a photo of your driveway, claimed there was a police presence. It's already hit national threads. He stood too fast. My children were tied up. This isn't a scandal. It's a crime scene. The detective's expression didn't change. It will be both. Moments later, his phone buzzed again. Notifications stacked like falling bricks. Billionaire break-in. Black nanny found at abduction scene, suspect or savior. Verscore CEO's home breached. Inside job? He turned the screen face down. In the other room, an officer quietly guided Elizabeth into a chair. Another offered her a warm blanket. But the subtext was there, in the way their questions hovered just a little longer around her answers. What do you remember, Ma'am? I was feeding them lunch. I put them down. Then, nothing. I woke up tired. Did you recognize any voices, any sounds before? She shook her head. I don't remember anything after the bottle warmer beeped. Then, pain. Darkness. Any visitors today? No, she said. Just deliveries. They logged her statement, took photos of her wrists, and handed her a printed document. Temporary release form, pending further investigation. Elizabeth signed without a word. Sean's lawyer, Patrick, arrived in a navy coat and a voice 1 octave too calm. He pulled Sean aside near the study. You need to get in front of this, he said. Right now. The optics are dangerous. Black woman. Children tied. You silent. I'm not thinking about optics, Sean snapped. You should be. Verscore goes public next quarter. We're vulnerable. This can't become a media circus. Sean clenched his jaw. So what? We fire her? Quiet severance. Waiver. NDA. We can protect her and you. And if she's not guilty? Patrick shrugged. It doesn't matter. The court of public opinion has already started the trial. Sean looked back toward the living room. Elizabeth sat with Jake now, the boy curled in her lap, thumb in his mouth. Her posture never wavered. She didn't cry, didn't plead, just held him. Later that night, when the last of the officers left, she stood by the doorway with her coat in her hand. Sean stopped her. Where are you going? I figured you'd want me gone, she said. Her voice was calm, but something in her eyes, exhaustion maybe or pride, held firm. I don't, he replied. She looked down at the bundle in her arms. Jake whimpered once, and she rocked him instinctively. They need routine, she whispered. I can give them that. Sean didn't respond, not with words. He simply stepped aside. She stayed, and in the silence of that cold house, with the headlines outside sharpening their claws, and the walls still echoing with confusion, something unspoken passed between them. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something closer to a beginning. The house felt quieter in the daylight, not calmer, just hushed. The kind of hush that lingers after something violent has passed through. The furniture stood where it always had. The cameras blinked red, waiting, but the air still carried something taut beneath the surface, like everything was holding its breath. Josh had finally fallen asleep upstairs, his cheeks flushed from crying, a soft wheeze in his breath. Sean watched him for a while before slipping out of the nursery, closing the door behind him without sound. He found Elizabeth in the kitchen. She stood at the counter, folding small bibs into precise squares. There was no music, no coffee brewing, just the rhythm of her hands and the hum of the fridge. "Can I sit?" he asked. She nodded without looking up. "Course." He pulled out the chair opposite hers and sat. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Sean wasn't used to silence feeling this loud. "I need to know what happened," he said finally. Elizabeth didn't flinch. She set the last bib down, wiped her hands on her pants and slowly lowered herself into the chair across from him. "I gave them lunch, carrots and bananas. Josh didn't like the carrots," she said softly, a hint of a smile touching her lips before vanishing. "Then I rocked them. Jake fell asleep first." She traced a circle on the wooden table with one finger. "I remember checking the bottle warmer. I remember the beep. Then I don't know." She looked up at him, and her eyes were steadier than he expected. "I woke up in pain. My arms were—" She paused, swallowed. "Pulled up. Couldn't move. Tape on my mouth. Boys were crying." She blinked, slow and careful, like she was trying not to cry again. Sean's throat tightened. "You didn't see who—" "No. Not even a shadow." Her voice was flat, tired. "Just rope. Then the door opened. You walked in." He nodded, staring down at his own hands, remembering the way her wrists had looked, the bruises, the stillness. "You didn't scream," he murmured. "I couldn't." He looked up. "You didn't panic." She finally met his gaze, something quiet but fierce in her expression. "I didn't have that luxury." Silence fell again. This time it stretched longer. Sean almost stood up, almost let her retreat back into whatever space she kept her thoughts in. But something stopped him. "Why are you still here?" he asked, softer than before. Elizabeth looked past him toward the window. Afternoon light spilled across the floor in long rectangles. "Because those boys need normal," she said. "And because I don't run from hard things." He leaned back, watching her, really
"You're not
watching
just a
her.
maid."
She gave a dry, tired laugh. "No, but that's what I applied for." Another pause. Then she spoke again, this time without being asked. "I used to work at a pediatric care center in Chicago," she said. "Kids with developmental delays. Some couldn't walk, some couldn't speak. We had this blue room full of pillows and music. It was the only place some of them smiled." Sean listened, still. "We lost funding 2 years ago. Some senator rerouted the money, said we were a soft cost. Half the families couldn't afford private care. We all got pink slips." She laced her fingers together, resting them on the table. "My brother lived with me. Younger, hot-headed. He had a run-in with the police, a wrong time, wrong place. They said it was a mistake." Her voice didn't break, but something in her hands tensed, like the pain lived there instead. "They never even showed me the footage." She took a breath. "After he died, I left. I didn't want to march. I didn't want to post hashtags. I just wanted quiet. So I moved here. This job showed up in a staffing app. Said, live in, high security, family needs discretion. Sounded perfect." Sean said nothing. He wasn't sure he had words that wouldn't feel hollow. Elizabeth stood, slowly. She picked up one of the twins' bibs, refolded it, then set it back down. "I'm not here to be a hero," she said. "I'm not here to be your story. I just want to work. Feed the boys, keep them safe, that's all." Sean's voice was low. "I believe you." She nodded once. "Good, because I'm not going anywhere." She walked past him then, heading upstairs to check on Josh. Sean sat alone in the kitchen, the scent of apple soap lingering faintly in the air, and realized something simple but sharp. For the first time in a long time, he'd actually listened. Not negotiated, not managed, not controlled, just listened. And he saw her now, not just as the woman folding onesies and checking bottle temperatures, but as someone carrying grief he couldn't name, and a strength he couldn't ignore. The house was still under 24-hour watch, but Sean didn't trust the locks anymore. By late morning, the estate staff had been trimmed to essential personnel only, 2 rotating security agents and the part-time housekeeper, who didn't speak much English and had been with them since before the twins were born. Elizabeth stayed. That had never been questioned, not anymore. But trust, that was a shifting thing. Sean stood inside his bedroom, staring at the smooth stretch of the wall behind the headboard. From the outside it was seamless, nothing to suggest anything hidden, but if you pressed 3 fingers into the right corner, held for 2 seconds, then slid left, the panel clicked open with a faint pneumatic sigh. He reached inside and pulled the door the rest of the way. The biometric safe stared back at him. Oval-shaped scanner, voice-activated backup, retinal reader, offline now. It should have been impenetrable. Sean touched the scanner. A green ring spun once before the mechanism unlocked with a soft whir. Inside, the folders were still stacked, labels clean, typed, but the weight felt wrong. He pulled them out, flipping through quickly. The final folder, thinner than it should have been, was missing 3 files. Gone. His stomach tightened. This wasn't about the twins. It never was. These weren't random attackers, no signs of ransom, no outside threats. And Elizabeth, if she'd been part of it, why fake being tied up? Why stay after the police left? Why sit in the nursery at night humming lullabies instead of disappearing with stolen secrets? Sean took the remaining documents to his office on the 2nd floor. The security feed still looped the same 3-hour window, camera angles frozen in a distortion of normal. He locked the office door behind him and dialed an encrypted number. Lynx Analytics. This is Nicholas, Priority Trace. I need a full analysis of a breach, internal override, physical and digital. How recent? Less than 48 hours. Source? My house. A pause. We'll assemble a team. Expect preliminary findings within 6 hours. Sean hung up, then leaned back in his chair, pressing his palms to his eyes. The missing files were part of a classified brief tied to a federal tech contract, one that, if leaked, could trigger congressional hearings, cancel deals and shift stock by billions. It wasn't public yet. Not even his board knew the full scope. Only a few names did. He looked at the list again. His legal team, the interim CTO, 1 financial officer, and a security administrator named Brandon Kell, who had helped install the estate's new system 6 months earlier. Brandon had been hired through a boutique cybersecurity firm. Personal recommendation. His name hadn't raised any flags, until now. Sean stood and walked to the nursery. The door was cracked open. Inside, Elizabeth was sitting cross-legged on the floor, Jake snuggled against her chest, eyes drifting closed. Josh was beside her, one chubby fist curled around her sleeve like he wouldn't let her go. She didn't see Sean watching. Her face was soft, tired, but present. Her free hand gently patted Jake's back in an unconscious rhythm. He felt something twist in his chest. Outside these walls, Elizabeth's name was still circling headlines. Every news aggregator had picked it up. Phrases like "found at the scene" and "unconfirmed role in incident" had painted her in shadow without saying anything outright. Inside the house she moved like a lighthouse, calm, necessary, unwavering, and still. A sliver of doubt remained, not about her guilt, about how easily he had considered it. He closed the door without making a sound. 6 hours later, Lynx called back. The override had come from inside the estate's admin panel, logged through a secondary access code written directly into the system, a back door, one not authorized or documented. It was installed with your last security upgrade, the analyst explained, 2 months ago. Who authorized that build? The line crackled. Then the name came through. Brandon Kell. Sean didn't move, his jaw set. Brandon had sat in this office, had eaten from his kitchen, had watched the boys toddle around the living room while testing the perimeter scans. He was also the one who'd worked with Sean's ex-wife's attorney during the custody review. The back door wasn't just a breach, it was betrayal. That night, Sean stood by the twins' crib while Elizabeth gently tucked Josh under a soft fleece blanket. The fever had broken, but their skin still glistened with the last traces of sweat. "Do you need anything?" she asked quietly. He shook his head. She started to leave. "Elizabeth." She paused. He didn't know what he was going to say until the words came. "You stayed." She turned toward him. Her expression didn't shift. "I told you, I don't run from hard things." He nodded, then added, "The breach was from the inside." Elizabeth raised her eyebrows just slightly, but she didn't look surprised. "I figured," she said. Sean looked at her a moment longer, and for the first time since that day he felt something close to clarity. The break-in wasn't about his children, it was about his secrets, and someone inside had used his sons to distract him from the real prize. But they hadn't counted on Elizabeth, and they hadn't counted on what that would awaken in him. It started with a whimper. Sean had been pacing the hall outside the nursery, reviewing encryption logs on his tablet when he heard it. A small mewling cry. Not panicked, not loud, just off. He stepped inside. Jake was flushed, skin clammy, eyes glassy. Sean pressed the back of his hand to the boy's forehead, then again slower, burning. He touched Josh next. Cool, for now. Elizabeth was downstairs sorting laundry. Sean called for her once, then again, louder. She came running barefoot, towel still in her hand. One look at Jake and the towel dropped. "Water," she said, crossing to the crib. "Get me water, and the thermometer, now." Sean moved, legs sluggish, hands shaking before he even reached the sink. By the time he got back, Jake had started to cry. Real tears now. Wet, high-pitched, agitated. Elizabeth took the thermometer and slid it under his arm, whispering something soft, something Sean couldn't catch. Her voice lowered into a hum, a pattern. The beep came, 103.2. She didn't flinch. "Call the on-call nurse," she said, reaching for a fresh onesie. "Tell her it's a sustained high fever, no vomiting, no rash, no seizure activity yet." Sean's fingers fumbled across his screen. He misdialed twice. When the nurse finally picked up, he could barely follow her questions. He repeated things out of order, left out key details. He didn't even remember which formula Jake had last eaten. Elizabeth took the phone from him. "Hi, this is Elizabeth William," she said, calm, steady. "I'm the primary caregiver for Jake and Josh Nicholas. One of the twins is spiking, 103.2 and rising. No seizure signs yet. Cool compresses started, fluids in progress. We'll monitor breathing and wake cycles, but I want you on standby." She nodded, listening, then hung up. "I've got this," she said, not unkindly, and she did. For 6 straight hours, she moved between the boys like she'd trained for this moment her whole life. Cloth, rock, check, repeat. When Josh started heating up an hour later, she didn't flinch. She just adjusted. 2 washcloths soaked in cool water rotated constantly. She switched them without looking. She sang the same melody again, something soft, almost sorrowful. It wasn't for the boys, Sean realized. It was for her. He stood in the doorway, useless, watching, holding a bottle he hadn't warmed correctly, folding a blanket she didn't need. Eventually, he stepped closer. "Show me," he said. She glanced up, then nodded. "Hold Jake upright, not flat. His chest needs to stay higher than his belly so he can breathe easier. Slow circles on his back. Nothing fast, just like this." She demonstrated on Josh. The motion was gentle, controlled. Sean copied her, poorly at first, but Jake stopped fussing. He sat in the glider with the boy in his arms, mimicking the rhythm. "Better," Elizabeth murmured. He looked over at her. Her shirt was damp from sweat and condensation, her eyes tired but focused. "You should rest," he said. She arched an eyebrow. "I'm good. I mean it." "So do I." Sean didn't argue. Instead, he asked quietly, "Why are you still here?" The question hung in the dim room. Not accusatory, not skeptical, just real. Elizabeth looked at him for a long moment. The hum of the white noise machine filled the silence. Then she answered just as quietly, Because they need me. She shifted Josh onto her chest lower and started to sway. And so do you. Sean didn't reply. He just watched her. This woman the media had reduced to a headline, the world had framed in suspicion. Here, in the half-light, she was a fortress. He realized, suddenly, painfully, how far he'd drifted from the things that mattered. He'd built walls of code and power, but no one had taught him how to comfort a crying child. Elizabeth had, not with degrees, not with titles, with presence, with steadiness, with something closer to love. By dawn, the boy's fevers had broken. Jake stirred first, still weak but alert, mouth searching for a bottle. Josh followed an hour later. Elizabeth sat slumped on the floor with both boys curled against her, arms loose but protective. Sean brought her water. She drank it slowly. "Thank you," he said. She nodded, then added, "You did okay." He laughed once, softly, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a failure to be taught by someone else. The email came at 2:13 a.m., marked urgent, no subject line, just a compressed folder from Links Analytics and a one-line message. "You'll want to see this in private." Sean opened it alone, sitting in his firm's off-site operations office in D.C. The lights dimmed, the streets outside slick with rain. Inside the folder, metadata logs, line item overrides, and one flagged name. Kell, Brandon, security admin. Cleared 6 months ago. Brought in after an internal review recommended fresh eyes on the estate's digital blind spots. Smart, polished, always smiling. He was also tied, very quietly, to the law firm representing Sean's ex-wife in their custody case. Sean stared at the screen. One access point had been backdated to 72 hours before the break-in. A silent software update, invisible unless you knew where to look. And now, he did. The override had allowed for real-time control of the estate's cameras, alarm delays, even the biometric panel on the safe. The break-in hadn't been a breach. It had been an invitation. And Elizabeth, tied up, left like collateral, had been the decoy. A soft target. Disposable. Sean sat still for a long time. Then he stood and called a number he'd kept saved, but never used. Brandon Kell didn't show up at the office that morning. Sean found him instead in a Georgetown coffee shop, sipping oat milk foam like nothing had ever happened. The man's eyes flickered when Sean approached, but he didn't run. "Morning, Mr. Nicholas," Brandon said, like they were still colleagues. "Didn't expect to see you out here." Sean didn't sit. "You used my house like a pawn shop," he said flatly. "You sold access. My sons were used as props, and you left a woman tied to a bed just to make it believable." Brandon sipped his drink. "I didn't tie anyone up. But you opened the door for someone who did." The man didn't blink. "I did what I was paid to do," he said. "I don't write the playbook." Sean leaned in slightly. Not a threat, not even a whisper of violence, just presence. "Who paid you?" Brandon shrugged. "Doesn't matter now, you found out. Congrats." Sean stared at him. Then, "My ex-wife?" Brandon's silence was confirmation enough. "She needed leverage," he said after a beat. "Custody cases are brutal. She knew you'd go nuclear if your image got touched. If the story hit the press just right, black nanny, missing files, tied children, it would snowball. You'd settle. You'd go quiet. She'd win." He looked up. She almost did. Sean said nothing. Brandon leaned back, arrogant. "Look, everyone has a price." Sean didn't speak, didn't flinch, didn't reach for his phone. He just turned and walked away. His silence was louder than anything else. Back at the estate, dusk settled like a bruise along the horizon. The boys had been given their baths. The monitors buzzed faintly in the hallway. Sean stood outside the nursery door. Inside, Elizabeth sat in the rocker with Josh curled against her chest, eyes closed, breath even. She ran a slow hand over his back in circles. The same lullaby, the same rhythm, the same steadiness. Nothing performative, nothing for show. Just love. Undemanding, unspoken love. Sean felt something twist in him. Not rage, not victory. Shame. Not for what had happened, but for how quickly he'd considered her guilty. How reflexively he'd wondered if she'd had a part in it. He thought of Brandon's smirk. Everyone has a price. But Elizabeth had stayed, not for money, not for headlines, not for forgiveness. She stayed because the boys needed her. And, he was starting to realize, so did he. Elizabeth looked up as he stepped into the doorway. "You're back," she said softly. Sean nodded. She didn't ask what he found. She didn't need to. He crossed the room and sat on the floor beside her chair, knees pulled up. Just quiet. Just present. Josh stirred, pressing closer to her chest. Sean reached out, tentative, and let his hand rest over the boy's back, overlapping hers. Elizabeth didn't pull away. They sat like that a long time. A man, a woman, and a child, wrapped in a silence not of fear, but of rebuilding. One beat at a time. The ballroom was flooded with lights. Rows of cameras blinked like watchful eyes. A sea of polished suits and sleek screens waited to devour every word. It was supposed to be a launch. VerseCore's next-generation AI logistics line was scheduled to debut in front of investors, tech giants, and federal contractors. Sean was meant to walk out with coded buzzwords, dazzle them with innovation, let the market drink it in. Instead, he stood behind the podium in a black suit with no tie, throat dry, hands unclenched. There was no pitch deck on the screen, just silence. He looked out over the crowd, then into the nearest camera. "My name is Sean Nicholas," he began, "and I was supposed to tell you about software tonight." A pause. But that's not the story anymore. The room didn't stir. Not yet. Not as he stepped around the podium and let his words steady themselves in the stillness. "Last week, someone broke into my home. They bypassed a security system I helped design, one I trusted to protect what mattered most. They didn't take jewelry. They didn't even take money. They took something worse." He let the sentence breathe. "They took peace. My sons, Jake and Josh, were tied together in my own bedroom, left against the body of a woman I trusted like family." A few phones dropped, a few heads tilted. I wasn't supposed to be home, but I was. And what I found there, it's haunted me every day since. The screen behind him shifted, not to diagrams or blueprints, but a simple date, Tuesday, 2:06 p.m. Breach window begins. He continued. "I hired a man last year, Brandon Kell. Some of you might know him. Referred through a legal channel connected to my ex-wife's firm. He installed a back door into my home systems, sold access, enabled a leak of highly sensitive merger documents hidden in a biometric safe." There was a rustle. Tension now. This wasn't just espionage. It wasn't just theft. It was a manipulation designed to destroy my credibility, my family, and to frame an innocent woman as a scapegoat. The screen changed again. A single line. Elizabeth William, caregiver, target, survivor. "She didn't ask for this," Sean said, voice tighter now. "She didn't have an alibi because she was the victim. She didn't defend herself online because she was too busy calming my sons. She didn't go on the news. She just stayed." He scanned the crowd again. She didn't need proof to stay, just love. And for the first time since he'd started, Sean's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. "I owe her more than protection. I owe her the truth. So I'm giving it, on the record, in front of all of you. This company may be my legacy, the silence that follows my son's safety." Then came the flashbulbs, the avalanche of tweets, the cameras zooming in to catch whether his eyes were red. It didn't matter. He'd said what needed saying. By the time he got home, it was just after 9. The house was warm again, dim lighting in the hallway, a soft trail of laundry folded on the stairs. He found her in the kitchen, rinsing bottles. The hum of the dishwasher ran low behind her. She didn't look up right away, just kept cleaning. Sean stood there watching her rinse a small green sippy cup like it was the only thing in the world that mattered. When she did glance over, she didn't speak, just arched a brow. "I didn't use your name," Sean said quietly. "I didn't want them coming for you." Elizabeth turned off the faucet. "You still told the truth," she said. "I did." He took a step closer. "You didn't ask for any of this." "No," she agreed, drying the cup with a dish towel. "But I won't walk away." Sean swallowed. There were still headlines outside. Still people dissecting her photo, her history, her silence. But in here, in this kitchen, with a magnet on the fridge and one cup in her hand, none of that reached her. "You'll be dragged into this," he said. "Again." She met his gaze. "Then I'll keep showing up." She placed the sterilized cup on the drying rack and turned back to him. "Because they need me." A pause. "And maybe, so do you." He didn't reply. He just exhaled, slow, unguarded, and sat down at the kitchen island while she moved around him like she had every day since the boys were born. And for the first time, it felt like a home again. Not because it was clean, but because someone had chosen to stay. The house breathed again. It didn't happen all at once, just small shifts, a morning without sirens, a bottle left on the counter because no one was rushing, light that filtered through the windows instead of being blocked out by curtains and tension. The fevers had broken. The boys had started to laugh again, short bursts at first, then giggles that spilled down the hallway like sunlight after rain. Elizabeth labelled their drawers that afternoon, not for efficiency, she already knew where everything was, but for permanence. Josh, 012M, tops only, read one strip of masking tape. Jake, socks that won't slip. She wrote them slowly in tidy block letters. It wasn't about tidiness, it was about claiming space. Sean found her sitting cross-legged in the nursery, sorting baby wipes into baskets. He leaned against the doorway holding 2 plates of pancakes he'd made for the first time in years. "They're not good," he warned. She smiled. "They don't have to be." He handed her one and sat on the floor with her. No suits, no staff, just legs folded and fingers sticky with syrup while Jake squealed in his playpen and Josh tried to eat a teething ring sideways. It was quiet, but it wasn't hollow. They moved like people rebuilding from ruin, not with declarations but with action, with rhythm. Later that day, Sean called her into his office. The folder sat on the desk, cream-colored, thin. He didn't say anything at first, just tapped it with 2 fingers. Elizabeth picked it up, opened the flap and read the top line. "Legal Declaration of Guardianship, Jake Joshua Nicholas." She froze. "I know this wasn't in your job description," he said gently, "but it's not charity. It's trust." Her hands trembled as she flipped to the signature line. She asked. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." She signed it quietly, then closed the folder and held it to her chest like a fragile book. Sean watched her for a long time, not just to make sure she was okay, to remember this moment, to mark it. That evening it happened. They were in the living room, Elizabeth folding towels on the rug, Sean scrolling through emails on the couch, one eye on the twins. Jake was standing near the ottoman, steadying himself with both hands. He let go for a heartbeat, then another. Then he took a step. It was clumsy, wobbly, a drunk sailor's swagger, but it was real. He toddled forward, 1, 2, 3 steps, right into Elizabeth's arms. She caught him without surprise, just warmth, as if she'd been waiting all along. Sean looked up. She was laughing, holding Jake high in the air like he weighed nothing. "Did you see that?" she called. Sean rose slowly, eyes wide, mouth parting before the laugh came. A real one. Not the clipped boardroom chuckle, not the tired, polite hum. A full, unfiltered sound that cracked open something he hadn't touched in years. Elizabeth looked over her shoulder, still smiling, still holding Jake. He walked toward her. "Thank you," he said. Simple, honest. "For what?" "For staying." She just nodded, her eyes soft. "Someone had to," she whispered. And in that house, no longer a crime scene, no longer a fortress, something shifted. It wasn't a resolution, but it was a beginning. Morning light spilled across the kitchen floor, warming the tile and touching the edge of the fridge. The same fridge that had once been blank. No magnets, no notes, no clutter. Just stainless steel and silence. Now it held something new. At the top, in Sean's blocky handwriting, written on a torn scrap of notebook paper. Jake, Josh, Elizabeth. Below it, 3 words underlined once. We build safety first. And beside it, a yellow sticky note in soft, looping cursive. And then, we build joy. The notes weren't part of any grand ceremony. No speech, no announcement. They just appeared one morning, and no one took them down. Elizabeth stood by the stove, humming while flipping tiny pancakes with blueberries pressed into the batter. Josh sat in his high chair, chewing on a corner of his bib, while Jake banged a plastic spoon against the tray like he was leading a parade. Sean entered barefoot, still half asleep, his t-shirt rumpled. He passed behind her and kissed the top of Jake's head, then poured himself coffee with one hand, yawning with the other. The estate, once a showroom of sharp corners and expensive silence, now hummed softly with life. There were fingerprints on the windows, blocks scattered on the hallway rug. One of the potted plants had been relocated to the patio after Jake tried to eat a leaf, and nobody cared. Elizabeth sang quietly while folding laundry on the sofa. Sean started taking slow morning walks through the garden with the twins strapped into a double stroller, pointing out birds he couldn't name. The city outside, the IPO deadlines, the board whispers, the press cycles, began to blur into background noise. Inside, they had a new rhythm. One built not on fear, but on choice. One afternoon, Elizabeth found a folder slipped between the mail. It was from Sean's lawyer, already notarized. The guardianship documents were finalized. Her name, Elizabeth William, typed in bold. Legal co-parent in the event of emergency. She didn't cry when she saw it. She just exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for a long, long time. Later that night, Sean cooked dinner. Badly. The rice was overcooked. The chicken a little dry. But he set the table, poured glasses of water, and called everyone to sit. Jake and Josh sat on either side of Elizabeth. Sean sat across, watching them all. "This feels good," he said. "It is almost good," surprised, she replied. They ate without rush. No one checked a phone. No one filled the silence just to fill it. After dinner, Elizabeth wrote a new sticky note and placed it under the first. "We build slowly. We build strong." It stayed on the fridge. They added to it over time. A small magnet shaped like a giraffe. A crayon scribble labeled Josh in toddler handwriting. A picture of the 3 of them at the park. Sean squinting in the sun. Elizabeth mid-laugh. Both boys in matching bucket hats. One morning, Sean opened the fridge to grab juice and saw a new addition. Another sticky note, this one faintly creased but deliberate. This wasn't the plan. But maybe it's the point. He stood there for a long time, holding the carton. Outside, the boys were laughing in the living room, chasing a ball across the floor, while Elizabeth called out, "Not near the table, Jake!" And he smiled. Not a CEO's smile. Not a calculated PR grin, just real. Because this wasn't survival anymore. It wasn't crisis, or scandal, or cleanup. This was family, quiet, steady, chosen, built not with declarations, but with pancakes, with baby wipes, with sitting beside someone while they folded towels and letting that be enough. It wasn't the legacy Sean had planned. It was the one that found him anyway, and he wasn't letting go.